What's going on, everyone? We are back and we are officially in full NFL draft mode. With the draft about a month away, now is the perfect time to go ahead and start analyzing all these possibilities of what teams can do, analyzing the players, looking at team needs, and that's exactly what I have done. I have got my first round mock for you. Now, a couple of quick notes. This is version 1, so there are currently no trades. As we progress through the versions in the coming weeks, I will be adding trades, so that is something to look forward to. On top of that, I did want to go ahead and let the dust settle a little bit on the NFL Combine and on NFL free agency, just because obviously that will bring a lot of change to these predictions. We're going to have a lot of college guys rising, some guys falling, and then also following some of these big free agency moves and trades, team needs did change. So keep all of this in mind. But for now, let's get right into it. With the first pick overall in the 2019 NFL Draft, the Arizona Cardinals select quarterback Kyler Murray. And it sure seems like all signs are pointing to this being the selection here. To me, there's three things that probably clinch it. First and foremost, it always helps when you have someone high up in the organization that is absolutely infatuated with you. And that is the case with Cliff Kingsbury. As soon as he pretty much joined the Arizona Cardinals, hasn't been able to stop gushing about Murray. And yes, I do think the interest is genuine. Secondly, the measurements at the NFL Combine, they came in normal, nothing out of the ordinary, and that is a win for Murray. Lastly, the NFL Pro Day of Kyler Murray at Oklahoma. He had a great day throwing the football, and I think that all but clinched his selection as the top guy overall. Now, I will say, if I was the one making this selection here, I would probably pass on Murray in favor of someone like Quinnen Williams or Nick Bosa, just because this is now back-to-back years where the Cardinals would potentially take quarterbacks in the first round again. And I just think that the Cardinals have a lot of holes right now that even if you inserted Kyler Murray in there, I think he's going to also see his struggles. Look, I'm not the biggest Josh Rosen fan, but still, it's unfair to blame everything on him as far as how the season went. There were a lot of holes on that offense, a lot of holes on that defense, so do keep that in mind. Potentially, maybe the Cardinals look for a trade down partner. A lot of talk has been made about the Raiders and their interest in Murray, but that's a discussion for another time. For now, the Cardinals stick with Murray and hope that he can be Russell Wilson 2.0. With the second pick overall, the San Francisco 49ers select defensive end Nick Bosa. And if things really do play out this way, I think the 49ers become one of the biggest winners in this draft. And it might seem crazy to say because it's only the second pick in the first round and because the 49ers haven't made a trade or anything like that. But that's what happens when you land the best pass rush prospect coming out of the draft at number 2, when he should more than likely be going as the top selection overall. Now, the 49ers, they've been loading up on defensive tackles the last couple of years, and I realized they did get Dee Ford in a trade with the Kansas City Chiefs. I think he will be a big factor in that defense, but anytime you have a chance to pretty much pair up a guy like Dee Ford with someone like Nick Bosa, you absolutely take it. I think the 49ers are going to have a very much improved defensive line. I think they're going to have maybe two of the best pass rushers in the NFL. And for that reason, if you're the 49ers and Nick Bosa is available, you absolutely just turn that card in immediately and don't think twice. I love Nick Bosa for the 49ers if he is available. With the third pick overall, the New York Jets select defensive end Josh Allen. And to me, this selection comes down to two players, either Allen or Quinnen Williams. The reason I give the advantage to Allen is because he is that pass rusher. And to me, after the failed signing of Anthony Barr, who ultimately returned back to the Minnesota Vikings, reports did come out that Greg Williams, the new defensive coordinator of the Jets, was hoping to use Barr in more of that pass rusher role. Look, Allen definitely fits the bill there. To me, that's why he gets the advantage. He's a younger, more athletic version of Anthony Barr, so he is the selection for the Jets as long as they stay put here. With the fourth pick overall, the Oakland Raiders select defensive tackle Quinnen Williams. And I believe this selection will come down to actually whoever the New York Jets pass on. In this scenario, it's Williams, but guess what? I actually think he will be the better out of the two players. To me, he's more consistent, he's safer, and he had a great showing at the 40-yard dash at the Combine for someone his size. Also, let's be honest, the Oakland Raiders could use all the help they could get defensively, but the good news for them is this draft is absolutely loaded with defensive line talent, and Quinnen Williams is the poster child of defensive tackle studs. Now, this won't necessarily help the Raiders get to the quarterback, something they were missing dearly after trading away Khalil Mack last year. Go figure. But still, I think Quinnen Williams can be that piece that turns around the defensive line of the Oakland Raiders. So I think he would be a perfect fit for Gruden and for the newly appointed Mike Mayock. At number 5, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers select linebacker Devin White. And I think this could be a very interesting spot during the draft because the Bucs could be trade partners for someone trying to move up and land a quarterback or to jump some other team for an area of need. But for now, we stay put here, follow our rules, and the Bucs go at a position of need. And for a player that, again, had a great combine, had a great season, is by far the best linebacker in this class, someone that is young, that's athletic, that can cover, and has got that quickness as well. Devin White, I'm sure a lot of other teams are chomping at the bit to get someone like him, guys like the Denver Broncos, the Cincinnati Bengals, but instead, after the loss of Quan Alexander, the Tampa Bay Bucs land the stud linebacker from LSU. At number 6, the New York Giants select defensive end Montez Sweat, and the New York Giants, make no mistakes about it, are one of the most intriguing teams in this draft because no one in their right minds has any speck of an idea what the hell Dave Gettleman will do with this selection. Obviously, he traded away Odell Beckham to the Browns, but it's too early to be selecting a wide receiver here. The question is, will the Giants select a quarterback maybe? But recent reports have been that they aren't as in love with Dwayne Haskins as we initially thought. So for that reason, I'm going to go to the Dave Gettleman approach and target either an offensive lineman or a defensive lineman. The reason I give Sweat the advantage here at the defensive line position, not only did he have an absolute monster of an NFL combine to increase his stock, but also the Giants recently lost Olivier Vernon, so they do need that edge presence. The one interesting thing that will be here is the recent heart condition that came about Montez Sweat during the combine. Will that hurt his draft stock? At this point in time, I'm more inclined to say that it won't because he wasn't really sent home from the combine. He was still allowed to participate, so maybe not as serious as people believe. For that reason, Sweat is the selection here for now. At number 7, the Jacksonville Jaguars select Jawan Taylor. And to me, you have to go with an offensive lineman here, especially after moving on from Blake Bortles and investing your future into Nick Foles. The question will be, does Nick Foles translate his success that he had in Philadelphia into his new home in Jacksonville? The only way the Jaguars are truly going to find out is if they invest in guys that will protect him and keep him upright. In order to do that, they invest a pick in Jawan Taylor, probably the best offensive line tackle, especially after his performance during the NFL Combine. At number 8, the Detroit Lions select defensive end Rashawn Gary, and ultimately Detroit could go a number of different ways with this pick. It could be a defensive lineman, it could be a linebacker, it could be a DB. They need a lot of help defensively. I'm inclined to believe that Matt Patricia, with his defensive background, will stick to that side of the football, but ultimately I'm going with the homegrown talent in Gary, who is from Michigan. They pair him up with Trey Flowers. That's a heck of a rushing duo. It helps them alleviate the loss of a guy like Ziggy Ansah, and it hopefully helps them get after a quarterback like Aaron Rodgers. At number 9, the Buffalo Bills select defensive tackle Ed Oliver, and the Bills could go a number of different ways with the selection. Wouldn't surprise me if it's an offensive player, maybe a wide receiver to give Josh Allen some more weapons. I realize the Bills added guys like John Brown and Cole Beasley, but they aren't really wide receiver number ones. They could also go offensive line to protect Josh Allen, but ultimately I'm going defensive here, and I'm going a defensive tackle specifically to replace the loss of someone like Kyle Williams. On top of that, Sean McVay has got that defensive background, so this pairing just makes too much sense. At number 10, the Denver Broncos select quarterback Drew Lock, and if reports are correct, then John Elway is completely enamored with the prospect from Missouri, which leads me to believe that this will be the selection just because of the amount of pull that Elway has in that front office for the Denver Broncos. He usually gets his way. He He's been trying to find the next John Elway for the last couple of years, but he hasn't had the same amount of success as he would like, i.e. Paxton Lynch. We'll see if Drew Lock is the next Paxton Lynch or if he can turn out to be the long-term answer for the Broncos. Obviously, they did sign Joe Flacco, which is why I would like to see them upgrade other areas of need like that defense. That was their strength the last time they were a playoff team. But for now, until reports change, Drew Lock is the pick here. With the 11th pick overall, the Cincinnati Bengals select linebacker Devin Bush. And to me, this is either going to be an offensive lineman or a linebacker. Obviously, the Cincinnati Bengals were historically bad defensively last year, especially at the linebacker position. And to begin with, this was an area of need, but now even more so with the departure of Vontaze Burfict, Bush would be an excellent candidate to fill that hole. The question is, will Zach Taylor leave his impression on this team as the new head coach, having that offensive mentality? Does he add some offensive talent, especially at the offensive line position? Getting a guy like Jonah Williams, also a possibility to protect Andy Dalton. And don't sleep on a quarterback selection here. That could be a dark horse candidate. But for now, I'm going with the biggest area of need at linebacker with Devin Bush. At number 12, the Green Bay Packers select tight end TJ Hockenson. And after doing a good job of addressing a lot of needs on the defensive side of the football, the Packers turn their attention to the offensive side of things. Hockenson, the top tight end prospect for this year's draft. It's between him and his teammate Noah Fant from Iowa, but Hockenson gets the nod because of what he can do as a blocker. But I do think this has to be an offensive selection, considering the loss of Randall Cobb, Jimmy Graham not getting any younger, and the fact of the matter is that Aaron Rodgers, he's so good, the Packers can't afford to keep wasting his best years. For that reason, they give him another weapon in Green Bay. At number 13, the Miami Dolphins select offensive lineman Jonah Williams. And if reports are true and the Dolphins really do plan on tanking this year in order to select a guy like Tua Tagovailoa next year, then no matter what, the selection here can't be a quarterback. Instead, go ahead, upgrade that offensive line, continue to add pieces in order to ensure that whoever you have at the quarterback position in the future is well protected and can have a long and healthy career. At number 14, the Atlanta Falcons select defensive tackle Christian Wilkins. And every single year, there's a pairing or two between teams, players, and or positions that is reported by everyone. And this year, it's for sure the Atlanta Falcons and that defensive tackle position, but more so a player like Ed Oliver than anyone else. I just don't think Oliver will be available at number 14. I wouldn't be surprised in reality if the Falcons make an effort to trade up and land Oliver. But for now, instead, they stay put, land the next best defensive tackle in Christian Wilkins from Clemson. At number 15, the Washington Redskins select quarterback Dwayne Haskins. And yes, in this scenario, Haskins falls all the way down to number 15 after reports came out that the Giants aren't nearly as infatuated with him as once believed. So the Redskins instead get their next franchise quarterback because more than likely Alex Smith won't be playing in 2019. Heck, who even knows if he will be playing ever again? And even though the Redskins did acquire Case Keenum, he obviously isn't the solution long term. Instead, they invest a pick in Haskins, who many people believe to be the most accurate quarterback coming out of college this year. At number 16, the Carolina Panthers select offensive lineman Andre Dillard. And I firmly do believe the Panthers will go offense with their first selection. Ron Rivera is on record saying that the Panthers' main goal is to help out Cam Newton through this draft. And what better way than getting a franchise left tackle after the disappointment that was Matt Khalil getting cut after that $50+ million deal that he signed a few years back, of which he didn't earn a single dollar the way that he played. Regardless, there's also a couple different scenarios here that I could see. Wide receiver is one after Devin Funchess went to Indianapolis. I did have Garrett Bradbury as someone slotted here, but after the signing of Matt Paradis, that's no longer really an option. Defensively, guys like Clelin Ferrell have been tossed around as options after the retirement of Julius Peppers. Like I said, I think the offensive position will be addressed. Linebacker also an option after the departure of Thomas Davis. Defensive backs are always an option for the Carolina Panthers. That has been an area of need ever since the departure of Josh Norman. But for now, they go ahead, select that left tackle, and ensure the protection of Cam Newton for years to come. At number 17, the New York Giants select wide receiver DK Metcalf. And yes, in this scenario, the Giants find their Odell Beckham replacement in Metcalf, specifically with the pick that they obtained for the Odell trade. And I just think the temptation to pass up someone like Metcalf will be too much to resist. And the Giants get that number 1 wide receiver. Even though they signed a guy like Golden Tate, he's a little bit too old. I don't know how much he has left in the tank. He's more of that slot guy. Metcalf can be that wide receiver number 1. He absolutely killed it in the combine. Obviously, there's some concerns with the cone drills, but that was somewhat to be expected. The ceiling, however, is just so high. He's getting comparisons to Calvin Johnson, and honestly, even if he can be 50% of what Calvin Johnson was, this would be a home run for the Giants. At number 18, the Minnesota Vikings select offensive tackle Cody Ford, and in my opinion, this selection has to be an offensive lineman. Cody Ford, an exceptional one at that, and I think he's going to go a long way in protecting a guy like Kirk Cousins. The disappointment that the Vikings had last year, obviously Kirk Cousins underperformed a little bit, but that offensive line didn't play up to its potential. It didn't create the running holes that it necessarily should have. That put extra pressure on Cousins. He didn't have the most amount of time either in terms of throwing the football. Cody Ford will go a long way in resolving both of those issues. At number 19, the Tennessee Titans select defensive end Clelin Ferrell, and this is great value for Ferrell at this point in time. The Titans, it fits what they do best. They're a run-heavy team, and then they try and lock it down on defense. They recently acquired Cameron Wake, which will go a long ways in helping that defensive line, but the addition of Clelin Ferrell, who could also learn from someone like Cameron Wake, I think will be a great selection for the defensive-oriented Titans. At number 20, the Pittsburgh Steelers select cornerback DeAndre Baker, and I'm sure a lot of Steelers fans will be wanting the Steelers to address the offense after the losses of Antonio Brown and Le'Veon Bell, but the fact of the matter is they still have guys like Juju Smith and James Conner who both flourished last year when they did play. And the reason the Steelers lost the games that they did wasn't because they had trouble on offense for the majority of those times. It was because their defense did not step up. And the needs on defense, in my opinion, start with the cornerback position. It was alleviated at the linebacker somewhat by the addition of Mark Barron. For that reason, cornerback need is elevated and the selection is Baker. At number 21, the Seattle Seahawks select defensive end Brian Burns, and after establishing a dominant rushing attack last season, with already having Russell Wilson who's established and can make any wide receiver legitimate, they should turn their attention to their defense and building that back to the unit that it once was. In order to do so, start with the defensive line side of things. Now, safety is also a possibility here after the departure of Earl Thomas, but that can be addressed in the second round. When you start rebuilding defense, do so at the defensive line, and Brian Burns should be an excellent candidate as someone that is honestly great value here considering his projections as a top 15 pick. At number 22, the Baltimore Ravens select wide receiver Paris Campbell. And most likely the Ravens are considering two positions here, either wide receiver or linebacker. And unless a guy like Devin Bush is still available, I do think they will pursue the wide receiving position. After the departures of John Brown and Michael Crabtree especially, there really aren't many downfield weapons left for Lamar Jackson. And if that's the case, opposing defenses are just going to stack the box and stop the run, which is going to make offensive life for the Ravens extremely difficult. That's why you pair up Paris Campbell, the speed he has, and the big arm that Lamar Jackson has for a great downfield target. At number 23, the Houston Texans select offensive tackle Greg Little, and this is by far the biggest area of need for the Houston Texans. They must upgrade that offensive line, and it's not even close. The fact of the matter is, even if it's not Little, it should be some other lineman. There's no excuse for it. They have to go ahead and invest more stock into protecting Deshaun Watson, and in order to do so, you have to go ahead and upgrade that offensive line. At number 24, the Oakland Raiders select tight end Noah Fant, and after addressing their wide receiver need in free agency by adding Antonio Brown and having a bona fide wide receiver number 1, the Raiders now need to replace the production of Jared Cook, who was such a huge part of that offense last year. Insert Noah Fant, the second best tight end in this class, purely because just Antonio Brown on that offense is not enough. Give Derek Carr his security blanket yet again. Fant should fill that role wonderfully. At number 25, the Philadelphia Eagles select offensive lineman Dalton Risner. And even though the Eagles re-signed Jason Peters, he isn't getting any younger. On top of this, they obviously parted ways with Nick Foles, who had pretty much become a safety blanket for them whenever Carson Wentz was injured. Well, guess what now? Wentz, if he is your franchise quarterback, the way you guarantee that is first and foremost by keeping him on the field. The way to do that is going ahead, investing in more offensive line help. Risner is the perfect candidate. At number 26, the Indianapolis Colts select defensive end Jachai Polite. And at this point in time, I do think this pick will be on the defensive side of things because offensively, the Colts are pretty much set. Their offensive line is stellar. Andrew Luck, healthy, check. Wide receivers, T.Y. Hilton, added Devin Funches, tight ends, check. So it has to go to the defense. Darius Leonard was a home run last year. Now turn your attention to the defensive line side of things. They added Justin Houston, but he will only be a temporary solution. Go ahead, add a guy like Jachai Polite that a lot of people have as a top 20 pick, good value, and have him learn from Justin Houston to get you a nice pass rushing combination. At number 27, the Oakland Raiders select defensive back Greedy Williams. And even though the Raiders have some decent pieces in the secondary, they continue to upgrade the defense as a whole by adding the next best defensive player left in the first round. Greedy Williams fits that bill. He is, if not the best, the second best rated corner in this class. This is good value for Williams, and locking down that secondary will allow the defensive linemen of the Raiders to get to that quarterback and hopefully improve the defensive situation in Oakland. At number 28, the LA Chargers select defensive tackle Dexter Lawrence. And again, the LA Chargers have been one of these teams that have been associated with a certain position. This year, it's been defensive tackle. Dexter Lawrence is a guy that fits the bill again. The other half of the scary defensive tackle duo of Clemson. He will go ahead and be a starter from day one. Some dark horses to consider. There have been rumblings about potentially grooming the heir apparent to Phillip Rivers. That'll be something interesting to keep an eye out for. But for now, the easy pick, Dexter Lawrence. With the 29th pick, the Kansas City Chiefs select center Garrett Bradbury. And look, if things really do play out like this will be a slam dunk of a pick for Andy Reid. A lot of people will probably be wanting defense here considering how bad the Chiefs got beat left and right defensively, all the points they gave up, and also the fact of the matter is how offensively dominant they were. But the clog of that entire offensive line, their center, Mitch Morse, left for Buffalo, so the Chiefs need a replacement. And unless they do something in free agency leading up to the draft, Garrett Bradbury, like I said before, is a slam dunk. To me, he is my most dominant offensive lineman, even though it's at the center position. So it's not as big of an area of need throughout the league. But for teams that do need help at that position, Bradbury, I think, will be an all-pro from day one. Next at number 30, the Green Bay Packers select wide receiver Marquise Brown, and the retooling of the offense in Green Bay continues. After the departure of Randall Cobb, that leaves a little bit of a void at the slot position. Marquise Brown can go and both be that down-the-field deep threat, but also fill in the slot position as well. Pair him up opposite Devontae Adams, and Aaron Rodgers will be jumping with joy. At number 31, the LA Rams select linebacker Mack Wilson. And again, I think the Rams can go in several different directions here. I think the two biggest areas of need are at linebacker and at offensive line. The offensive line isn't getting any younger, and they've sustained some losses in free agency. Same situation at the linebacker level. The only reason I prioritize the linebacker is because it's on the defensive side of the football, and we all remember the struggles that the Rams had defensively. For that reason, they choose to go ahead and get a defensive playmaker that can captain their defense for several years to come. With the last pick in the first round, the Super Bowl champion New England Patriots select defensive tackle Jeffrey Simmons. And to me, this is the prototypical Patriots selection, getting a guy that's sliding down draft boards because of an injury. Obviously, it's a serious one. It's an ACL tear. He will have to sit out for a while, maybe the entire season. We will see. But the fact of the matter remains, this is a guy that was a top 10 selection before the injury. He might have some issues, but the talent is obviously there. He was going to be one of the top defensive tackles probably right after Quinnen Williams being selected. Instead, he goes to the Patriots, an organization that will take him under their wing and they will put up with him as long as the talent is there. I think it's a perfect scenario for Simmons. With that, we wrap up our first round mock draft version 1.0, and as always, let me hear it in the comments section. Did you agree, disagree with these picks? Are there players that I had ranked too high, certain players that I didn't mention or ranked too low? What do you think your favorite team should be selecting in this upcoming draft? Let me hear all of it. And like I mentioned before, the next mock draft to come out will include trades, so just something to look forward to until then. But for now, if you guys enjoyed, as usual, make sure to like, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in future videos.